to fear is
In war, there is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we burn, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and politics. This is WallBuilders Live. You can find out more about us at our websites, wallbuilders.com and wallbuilderslive.com. In fact, on that wallbuilderslive.com website, you can grab our archives if you'd like to listen to some programs from the last few months. And every Friday, or almost every Friday anyway, we have Good News Friday, which means we bring you good news from across the nation. And that's today. I love Good News Friday. This is Rick Green. I'm here with Tim Barton. And Tim, I know you've got a lot of great news for us and a special guest later in the program that's going to share some good news.
Absolutely, Rick. A topic that we have talked about many times on Good News Friday. Love being able to talk about the victories that we're seeing with the issues of life, with so many abortion clinics that have come down, restrictions on abortions. Several years ago, there was a big push by Christians and really conservatives in general that we need to get back involved and engaged in politics. Go back to 2010 and overwhelmingly the majority of freshman congressmen that were elected with the values of life that we so appreciate, we support it. And really the values of life, we talk about that a lot, but the values of life reflect so much of the rest of someone's worldview that you can look at the way they view life and really with about a 98% certainty, they're going to be in the right positions on issues like marriage and the Second Amendment and even economic issues. But we elected these guys and since 2010, we have seen just a landslide of victories on this pro-life issue.
And why do you think that is? I mean, why was it that 2010 people woke up and let their voices be heard and researched the candidates a little better, and that's why we ended up with such a great group? And I mean, you mentioned Congress legislators as well. I mean, across the country, I think it was something like 600 new state reps and senators, and the vast majority pro-life. Why did we have such a good victory then? Because that really set us up for all these actual practical applications of legislation that are now pro-life.
It really did. One of the things, Rick, in the off-year elections, we see so often how political involvement drops dramatically. But for people who are motivated by character and values, we're not going and voting because the president has a slogan that we like. We vote based on values. Well, in 2008, there was a huge voter turnout, but so much of the voter turnout was not motivated by morality, not motivated by the right kind of standards. We really didn't evaluate candidates correctly. Well, probably there was a little bit of a wake-up call, but so many guys that really cared about the morality of a candidate, having someone who has integrity, who has the right kind of values, those people were not discouraged, which is a really good thing. It's easy so often for us to get discouraged and frustrated, and we want to take our ball and go home, but we decided, no, we're going to stay engaged, and this is just such a great reason why, especially with midterm elections coming up here in just a matter of months. The reason that Christians stay involved and engaged is because these are the moments when we really can take so much ground. And I think beyond the rhetoric of 2008 and 2010, we finally had people that were caring about values. And because of that, Rick, we talk about the stack of news that we go through on these Good News Friday. And I really have dozens, and I mean dozens of things related to victories we're seeing on the issues of abortion, where abortion support is at the lowest point in 3 years, and pro-life is at the highest. Now, this is after 2010 because we're in 2014, but we are seeing the trend where it's growing and growing and growing the right direction. I've got another article where abortion doctors are in the decline now. They're 40% less than it had been, and really it's the lowest level since 1973, but we are 40% less in 2011 than what we were even in 1982. So we are seeing this industry really begin to shrink and really begin to change.
And it does take time, right? I mean, even with a huge victory in terms of elections in 2010. I mean, we're just now beginning to, I shouldn't say just now, we've been getting a lot of benefit over the last 4 years in terms of legislation, but we're still reaping that benefit. I mean, it continues to grow even 4 years after that election.
It really has grown exponentially. In the matter of time, actually, I think if we backed up, people in 1973 would say this has not happened very fast. This has been a long, drawn-out battle, but we had a very decisive win in this battle against the abortion industry, against the murdering of children. We had a very big win in 2010, and it really has taken, even since 2010, it's taken several years and even several things that have gone to court cases where laws have been challenged. For instance, there's a law in Kansas. I'm looking at an article right now that a law in Kansas that had provisions against abortion clinics and cut the limited really the amount of funding, that they couldn't have certain fundings. And this was appealed under protest, and the court upheld. No, wait a second. We are allowed to cut funding, to cut these millions of dollars of support to this abortion industry. And so we are continuing to see these victories time and time again.
And not just, so you're saying not just legislative victories then, we're continuing to see the court uphold these legislative victories instead of striking them down.
We are, and this has been a long time in coming, and we still obviously have a long way to go. We have not come anywhere near where we want to be, but we are seeing a growing trend in this direction that we are seeing more and more of these positive things happen. In fact, even in culture, we're seeing this. One of the things that we're going to do today is we have the opportunity to interview someone who has just authored a new book. The book was released in just the last couple weeks. The book's called Sarah's Choice, and really it walks through the life of a girl who gets pregnant, and she has to walk through this battle of, am I going to have an abortion? Am I going to carry this baby to term? And she realizes the value of life, the significance of life, and it's an incredible book that details her struggle through this. It walks with her family and friends and sees the battle she has to go through. But I think maybe we got to jump over on this next line, and we got to interview somebody here real quick.
All right, we got a special guest, Grammy Award winning. In fact, this is somebody most of our listeners will have listened to in another arena, and that is music, obviously. Rebecca St. James, but she's also an actress, starred in several movies. And this book coming out could have a big impact on the pro-life community, influencing the culture to once again buy into the idea that life is precious and understand the value of it. Stay with us here on WallBuilders Live. The federal government is without question out of control in its growth outside of its limited jurisdiction as defined by our founding fathers. The question is, how do we get them back in check? How do we get our government back into its proper jurisdictional responsibilities? Well, some people are proposing a convention of states. It's something found in Article 5 of the Constitution, and I've heard good people on both sides of this. Some talking about how great it would be and how it could help to get the federal government in check. Others saying that it's a bad idea. Well, here at WallBuilders, we look at things from both a historical and a biblical point of view, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to analyze this issue of a convention of states. It's going to take place in a live webinar where you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions. Join us on June 19th, in the evening of June 19th at 8 o'clock Central Time. That's going to be 6 on the West Coast, 9 on the East Coast. Join us in this live webinar where you can ask questions, and we'll be discussing this issue of a convention of states. You can find out more information right now, and you can register for the webinar at wallbuilderslive.com.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. This is Tim Barton, and our special guest is someone who has been a popular name in Christian households literally for decades. We are joined with Rebecca St. James. Rebecca, it is such a pleasure to have you.
Hi, Tim. Great to chat with you as well. Thank you for the warm intro.
Absolutely, and thanks for coming on the program. We are just thrilled to have you, and actually, we are interviewing you because you have a new book that's coming out. I say coming out, it's just come out. May 27th was the release of it. And it's called Sarah's Choice. I remember a few years ago, there was a movie that came out where you had the leading role called Sarah's Choice, and I'm assuming those two things are very much related and connected.
Yes, they are. You great deductive skills there.
Well, yes, I pride myself on being able to deduce the simple. So I appreciate that. And obviously, as you did this book, I assume the movie was kind of the inspiration for that. Was there anything else that led to saying we want to do a book with that story?
Mostly because I think the topic of the film, really needed to be heard about. And, with a book, a novel, you can go so much deeper than, an hour and a half of a movie. So, it just seemed like, and we saw so much great response to the movie as well, that it just felt like a very natural thing to transfer it into a novel.
Well, and with people that aren't really familiar with it, it really, the story follows the life of a girl who gets pregnant and then struggles with the decision she's going to make with this baby. And so really, as the story unfolds, you see the struggle with making a painful decision, and the shame, actually looking at other people that had abortions around her. And so as the story unfolds, really it relates to a lot of women. And so I know that since the movie, with this book coming out with this theme and this story, I'm sure you've had the opportunity to minister to women. What is the impact you've seen from this story and the women you've ministered to?
Yeah, it's been awesome. I really have been able to see the response to the story, because the movie's been out for about 4 years now, and I got involved too very heavily with a lot of crisis pregnancy centers across the country, and did a lot of fundraising events for pregnancy centers, and it was so wonderful. I mean, I was just meeting like the best people on the planet that are supporting these amazing, strong girls that are facing unplanned pregnancies and right to the occasion and choosing life, and so, Sarah's story, I think, really does resonate with a lot of different people, because a lot of people are struggling with really intense choices and a lot of cultural pressure. Sarah's not a Christian at the beginning of the film, and she grew up in a Christian family, knows right from wrong, but is choosing to follow Jesus at the beginning of the story. And so there's that struggle, and she's got different voices, some saying have an abortion, some saying choose life. But then there is also guilt and fear that she experiences. And so I think a lot of different people going through a lot of different circumstances, maybe not this exact one, can kind of relate to her and the fear of facing such a huge decision. But there's also other themes of like the forgiveness of God in the movie, and it's a heartwarming story. It doesn't feel heavy. It feels like there's a lot of hope in it, and a lot of like God's love and forgiveness really shining through. So I think there's something for everyone in the story.
It's something that for sure we need to see more of, especially in the church. And it's interesting, you mentioned it's one of the themes that definitely the book portrays, but as this young lady has to determine what it is she's going to do and the belief system that she's going to follow and live by. And really the theme that you see in the book is something we're seeing in culture today, where we have so many young adults, so many college-age students who are really struggling with this concept of faith, when I think statistically somewhere between 70 and 88% of kids that go to university actually deny their faith while they're at university. And really there's a lot of hostility toward religion, but one of the things you point out in the book is that there comes a point when it cannot be our parent religion, or it can't be something that we've seen, and we have to kind of embrace, and it has to be ours. With the movie that came out recently, God's Not Dead, where this college student had to identify that. But this is kind of a theme that you guys address in the book. So what would you encourage maybe to parents who are having children in this position, or even to young people that are hearing our conversation right now? What would you encourage to help these young adults be able to take ownership of their own faith?
Well, probably, the biggest thing that I could encourage, like parents, to start off with, just you mentioned parents, what do parents do? And my husband and I are really, exploring that. We have a 3-month-old, but even now, like with her being so little, we're just starting to think about like heritage and, passing on our faith to her, and how do you do that? And I think the biggest thing is just living it, like living your faith without compromise, so that they see, that it's real, like that Jesus is making a difference, in our lives. I think when kids see any form of compromise, it really turns them away. And I think when we're not like truly salt and light, as parents, that can be super detrimental to our kids. So, but then I think probably the biggest thing I would encourage with 20-somethings or teens as well, own your faith by seeking the truth, and really fostering a relationship with Jesus. My husband and I both, we didn't know each other at the time, but my husband in his teens, he, had grown up in a Christian family, but just wasn't quite sure what he believed, and he sought the truth, and he studied really hard, and he found Jesus to be the truth. For me, it was, just really like diving in on fostering a relationship with Jesus and hearing from him and responding, making it very personal in my relationship, to where I felt that God was speaking to me, and I wanted to spend that time with him. So we all have our different ways of owning our faith, but I think it's really important in our youth to do that.
I think you nailed it, that it's something that as you seek truth, the Bible says that God is a revealer of truth, and that Jesus is the truth. And as we seek truth, ultimately we have that encounter, that knowledge and that experience, and it's something that's real. And so then no matter what happens, it's not taken away, because we have known, we have seen, and that's something that we continue to grow in and develop in our faith. And one of the cool things about pursuing God is there's always more of God to know, and there's always more to get.
Yes.
And so it doesn't stop with, we've had this encounter and that was great, but we can continue to grow in that. And one of the side notes I see in the book is with Sarah's parents. Sarah's the young lady who she gets pregnant, has this choice to make for our listeners and potentially the readers who haven't read this book yet. And Sarah's parents are pro-life. As we know as Christians that God is the author, the creator, the giver of life, we support pro-life. But one of the struggles that we see in the book is it's one thing to be pro-life, but then when there's this pregnant girl, it can be a different scenario, because sometimes it's hard for us as Christians to look and go, well, she made the wrong decision because she got pregnant and she wasn't married. And these situations, it's easy to be judgmental and forget that, if this young lady, she made a mistake by not being married before they had this, the sexual connection, and she's pregnant, but she didn't make the second mistake by having this abortion. She's carrying this baby. Right. What is it that Christians, especially pro-life people, can do to support these young ladies who are making now the right decision to carry this baby?
Girls in that situation tend to feel guilt and shame already, and condemnation from themselves towards themselves. And so, any kind of, if we're being condemning or judgmental in any kind of way, then we're not fostering a Jesus way of relating to people, because there is no condemnation for all who are in Christ. And so he didn't come across to anyone as judgmental, even though he could have been, because he was the Son of God. We can't be judged because we're all sinners, but he just had this spirit of grace. And so I think that's how we need to be towards mothers that are unwed, because but for the grace of God go we. We could all be in a similar situation, and we need to be loved in that, and graciously loved, and just told, you're not alone, we'll walk with you. And that's why I love crisis pregnancy centers, because when people don't have family or friends that are standing by them, they step in, and they are the family and friends that will walk them through that crisis pregnancy, and it's beautiful.
And Rebecca, I know that's something that you've done at concerts and different places I've heard and seen you speak, and you do a lot to advocate for these places where girls can go and get help. And I think that's one of the other things that the book kind of points out, is that there's kind of sometimes this myth of self-help. But sometimes we're in a situation where we can't solve that problem, and we need help. And I know that's
yeah.
one of the things that the book identifies, but that's one thing that I've heard you talk about, and people, so many listeners that have enjoyed your music or seen you talk or been to your concerts, we have seen you promote this pro-life, but also this compassion, these different groups that work to help these young ladies. Yeah. What would you say then for listeners? What role could we have in helping those people in this situation? What could we do?
For starters, if you know someone that's walking through it, first just pray for them, and then lovingly support them and say, I'll be here for you. What do you need? How can I walk you through this and support you? And then follow through with that commitment, But then if you don't know anyone that's dealing directly with it, volunteer at a pregnancy center. If God's given you a passion for life, work at a pregnancy center. There's always need for volunteers and for events as well that help raise funds for pregnancy centers. So there is a lot of work to be done, but it has to be done with compassion and love.
And that reminds me, too, of what David wrote in Psalms when he says, Lord, it's your kindness that leads me to this forgiveness. And that's one of the things that I hear you saying, too, as Christians, we need to respond the right way so we can embrace these girls, to help them get back on that position that God has for them, but also know that the love of God is bigger than those mistakes. And that's what, as Christians, we've all experienced and enjoyed and are so grateful that God's love is bigger than our mistakes, that nothing can separate us from the love of God. And so really that's what I hear you saying as Christians, as pro-life people, we need to make sure that we are supporting in that same manner. Okay, last question for you. When people go and they pick up Sarah's Choice, when they read the book, or maybe they go back and they see the movie, what is the one message, the one theme that you're hoping with this new book you guys are doing? What's the one thing you're hoping that people really get as a takeaway?
Well, my co-writer Nancy and I think, would both say that we want people to encounter Jesus and His love. That people, as they read the story of Sarah and see God pursue her heart and see Him reveal Himself to her, that every reader will, through the Holy Spirit, experience God's love as well, and recognize that He is reaching out to them every day, and have a listening ear for God's voice, and open your heart to His love. I think that's what we really pray, is that people will encounter the love of God through the book.
That's awesome. Rebecca, is there a website or a specific way that's best? I'm sure Sarah's Choice is going to be available in every Christian bookstore. But is there a website you guys have where people can come and see more about the book and more of what you have?
Yeah, people can go to our Facebook. We're just Rebecca St. James on Facebook. And then we also have a website, rsjames.com, and people can go there as well. But yeah, definitely hit up your local Christian bookstore. That's the best place to go. Okay,
Rebecca St. James on Facebook, or rsjames.com is a place to go. Rebecca St. James, we are so grateful. Rebecca, thank you so much for being with us today for the interview. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah's Choice is the book you want. Incredible story. And you guys stay with us. We'll be right back on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. The key to a self-governing nation is self-governing people, and the key to personal self-government is to live by the standards in God's Word. If someone cannot control himself by those standards, then our Constitution certainly will be unable to restrain him. Understanding this, John Adams declared, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion." Greed, ambition, revenge, or seduction would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. John Adams believed that successful government rested not upon our great Constitution, but rather upon moral and religious people.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Special thanks to Rebecca St. James for being on with us today. And Tim, this, it seems like this is kind of where your faith, the rubber meets the road. I mean, we can talk about it in church. We can push for pro-life legislation. But at the end of the day, what are we doing to actually help those ladies in need?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's one thing that we can be excited about the fact that the abortion industry is closing down, but the reality is that there's still a lot of girls who, in whatever the situation, whatever the circumstance, whether something happened to them, whether they made a poor decision, whatever it was, you still have people in need. And this is where really we ought to be challenged with what can we do to help people in need. And I think that's one of the cool things that in the book she really illustrates are the people that were surrounding Sarah, and Sarah's the main character. And so as Sarah's having to walk through this process, and her parents are going, okay, well, what are we going to do? Because we don't know. And, the embarrassment and the frustration, and then her friends and being ostracized, and so many things that are happening as Christians. This is especially when we want to make sure if we see someone in need, we don't want to look down our nose at them. We want to be able to say, you know what, let me help you. I know the way to go. I have, I can point you to the answer. I can do something for you. And so really as Christians, finding a way to give back and help in these situations.
And honoring, we should be honoring those that make the right decision after they made a wrong decision.
Absolutely.
I mean, those girls and those couples that say, hey, we're going to protect life. We're going to keep this life. We're not, I think today we kind of hide that instead of saying, hey, here's an example where we should say these people did the right thing. Let's encourage others to do the right thing as well.
Absolutely. And that is obviously where the challenge falls. When we pointed out in the interview, just because someone's made one mistake, well, we don't want them to make the second mistake, right? I mean, getting pregnant, not being married. Well, but now that they're going to keep it, they've made the right decision. We need to encourage and praise that and help them in this situation.
Amen. And look for a local Christian crisis pregnancy center in your area that you can help support financially and with volunteering as well. Thanks for listening today, folks. You've been listening to WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided.